we're trying to do basically, it's creating a drop-in solution for conventional plastic. And by drop-in, I mean the fact that you don't need to change any industrial process in the production of the plastic in order to shift it from conventional plastic to bioplastic. So there's no more money that needs to be put into equipment or whatsoever. It's the same machineries can do the other kind of plastic, which is a good plastic.
Can you say that again?
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm gonna need to unpack that a little bit more. Like I'd love to hear a little bit more of like layman's terms. Help us understand this, because this is super fascinating.
Yeah, the sustainability champion in us all is like, wait, it doesn't cost more money? Can other people hear this?
I need more.
I have some more things that you are going to be amazed by. So yeah, no worries.
Welcome to the VIRIVERSE, Immersive Sustainability by Viridescent. We are a storytelling and mentorship platform designed to support and inspire the sustainability champions of the world. This supergroup of changemakers wields circularity, art, science to write a formula for the very best of humanity. And together, we make saving the world fun.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hi, everybody. My name is Chance, and I am your designer here in the VIRIVERSE. And welcome to the VIRIVERSE live event and podcast experience. And we are so thrilled today to be joined by the wonderful Jose, and cannot wait to launch into conversation with him today. So, of course, as always, joined by our lovely co-host, Aurora Dawn Benton, aka
the changemaker.
The changemaker of all of the
can't work a mute button.
Isn't that the struggle of everybody's Zoom existence in the past year and a half or so? All right, so we're going to do a quick introduction of Jose, and then we'll do some housekeeping, and we'll launch into the conversation. So Jose Miguel Gutierrez is a Chilean living in Germany. Been there about 3 years, and after spending 3 years in the past in the Navy, realized his life needed more than just orders and cold showers. So that's when he went back to his hometown, decided to study business, and 4 years later, and with lots of experience through a European journey, his passion for sustainability has spiked and sparked. While doing some grocery shopping and pretty much looking at every street, noticing something quite upsetting: the amount of plastic that we consume. Not necessary, and actually made him a bit uncomfortable. And that's why, after analyzing some different supply chains, going into the sustainability space, and thinking about the idea of recycling waste from industries, came up with an idea, one that made a ton of sense to solve one of society's biggest problems right now, and one of the planet's biggest problems, that being plastic pollution. So for the past 2 years, he's been working along with his team at Ganic to come up with a solution to end needless plastic from the world. They've developed a chitosan-based biodegradable composite that can save tons of virgin plastic from being produced, and of course, ultimately ending up in the environment. And they're currently developing a solution for plague control in agriculture, which doesn't focus on trapping insects, but rather confusing them and avoid mating in crops. Looking at these things in a more natural way, following the model of our Earth. So Jose, if you want to just say a quick hello.
Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so to set the stage for the conversation, and then I'm going to flip it to Aurora to take us into the first part of this. So we're going to talk about 4 things. We're going to kind of look at Jose's origin story, how he's come to this place of wanting to be a change maker and save the world, and talk a little bit about Reganic and kind of what their mission and programming looks like. We are, of course, going to dive into this idea of plastic pollution along with eco-entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship. So Aurora, I'm going to flip it to you, kind of have Jose introduce himself, and then we'll dive into the building of a sustainability alter ego character, because
yes,
all
my
3
favorite
of us have
part. Yeah, and you know, it's so funny, Chance, you know, I've been on several of these, right? And so I was just listening to you say all of these things about the conversation and how we welcome people to give people the opportunity to challenge views and stuff. And I was like, that's why he asked me to co-host. I challenge things all the time. Like, that's probably why I'm divorced. I'm gonna always find, no, I'm kidding. I'm not argumentative, but I do like to challenge. So, and I like to be challenged. That's why I enjoy being part of the VIRIVERSE. So thank you so much for the opportunity to co-host and have this conversation with Jose. I'm sorry, let me first ask, Jose, do you go by Jose Miguel or just Jose?
Actually, my friends call me Guti because of my last name, but you can go Jose Miguel
Guti,
as you
okay.
wish. Yeah,
I'm
it's
going to call
entirely
you
up to you.
Guti. Guti. Okay, so Guti, my I'm very happy to be on this call today because I'm super excited to learn more about what you're doing, which we're going to get into. But first, this is an opportunity to learn a bit more about you, the essence of you, sort of your heart and soul. And that's what I love about the alter ego and the questions that lead up to its creation. And I've been looking at your alter ego image for a while and thinking it's just one of the more beautiful ones. I love all the color in it. One day I'm going to ask for an update to mine and have more color in mine. I love that. So let's start with maybe just give us just the quick sort of who you are. We're going to dive into that more, and then we're going to go into the elements of your alter ego. So we've heard a little bit, but tell us something we haven't heard yet that we should know, just even going into this conversation, what we should all know about Guti.
Okay. Well, as you already know, my name is Jose Miguel. I come originally from Chile, from the south of Chile, and I'm now 27 years old. One of the most interesting things about me is I consider myself a DIYer throughout my whole life. I've always tried to make things better, improve things from the way they are. Actually, when I was a little kid, my mom always used to talk to me and say, like, you don't have to break all your toys. And then for me, I was like, yeah, I have to. I need to see what's inside of them, what's making them tick, right? So that's one of the things that I think kind of created this path of myself of becoming a DIYer, finding solutions, and try to become a change maker for the world, for everyone.
That's fantastic. What a great setup to know that you're a DIYer, because I always wonder about people who like create, like use materials to create, because I'm a knowledge worker, right? So everything for me is like I create slides and deliver presentations. So I'm always fascinated by people who work with physical materials, and I'm looking forward to hearing the origin story of how you came up with your company and what you're developing there. But let's dive into your alter ego, and let's start with your the animal, right? So this is could be your favorite animal, or an animal that you identify with most, or that somehow connects with your purpose and vision in life. So tell us what we're looking at here in terms of this animal.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for creating this so amazing avatar. I really, when I saw it, I texted immediately Chance saying, wow, this is amazing. And well, I think the essence of the avatar itself, or kind of like the alter ego, represents water as our source of everything basically in life. And then the turtle kind of represents the struggle and the pains that sea animals are suffering because of our plastic pollution. We cannot say that this is something that humans are not responsible of. And yeah, just having the turtle also representing kind of one of the most iconic videos for me, where there was this turtle having a straw inside of his inside of the kind of, I think, on the head, and they removed it. It was so powerful, that the image for me, that it kind of stuck with turtles and protecting the environment, and what more important than protecting the seas. So basically that's it, water and turtles. And I love turtles, actually, by the way. They're so cool. I love them. You muted.
Sorry, just a quick question. Do you do a lot of like diving, snorkeling, things like that in water?
No, actually, that's very interesting because I think in one of my previous lives, I died drowning myself because I have a huge fear for the ocean. Huge fear of, and of course also respect. And you wouldn't believe that because I was 3 years in the Navy, but yeah, I have fear to the oceans. Yeah.
So this is, I feel like one of the things that we're really an insight that we're getting into you is that given that, and the fact that you did spend time in the Navy, the fact that you do identify with an oceanic creature, I sense in you a person who faces your fears head on. And rather than being defined by them, you're going to flip the narrative and make them part of your story. And I think that's actually a really cool way to identify with these elements that could also cause fear. So that's actually really very, very interesting. I'm very, very, very excited to hear that about you. Is your favorite, so one of our other questions is, what is your favorite nature element? So is it water, or is there another nature element that you would consider your favorite?
Well, I think I stick with water just because it kind of has the origin of many things in life. So it kind of represents a lot to me. So yeah, I think it is the one that is more important to me.
Okay. And then the other question is, what is your sustainability beacon? So sort of the thing that drives you in wanting to be in this space. I think we've gotten a little bit of a flavor of that from you, but maybe just elaborate on what it is that keeps you centered and focused on this mission in life.
Wow, okay. Well, I think I've always thought of myself as a very altruistic person, and kind of very empathic. So after, I think my niece is 7 years old, about to turn 8. And when she was born, I think kind of like my brother, of course, he became a father. And with that, I also became an uncle. And with that kind of like created a lot of things in my life. And the beacon for me is creating a better environment and a better world for our future generations. I think that is one of the most important things that we can do throughout our life, is always thinking, what are the consequences of my actions in the future? So I think that's kind of my beacon, just creating better things for society and for the generations that are to come.
I think that one of the beautiful things about that is that it resonates with so many people. I always recognize that that is a driver, and I try to tap into it. For me personally, it doesn't resonate. I don't have children. I do have nieces, but it's not really my driver, but I hear it all the time, that people feel that either their cause and their purpose is to make sure that the future is secure for others, or I often hear people talk about their personal connection with nature. If they grew up camping and hiking, I think, Chance often reflects that. A lot of people do. For me, just so those of you who don't know me, just a little bit of an insight on me is what my purpose and driver is, that everyone should experience dignity in their work and have an opportunity to contribute. And so it's more about like, right now, what can I do right now to help the workers of the world feel like they get to be part of this journey, especially lower levels of organizations that are often left out of these conversations, because often these conversations can be very elitist and very sort of C-suite. And we need to include and incorporate everyone in the opportunity to drive impact and be recipients of impact. So with that, Chance, I don't know if you want to maybe shift into a little bit more of the technicality of like how he started Reganics, or is there anything else on sort of the origin story you'd like to cover?
Yeah, I'd just like to offer a kind of a sustainability lesson on balance here. Jose, of course, listening to you speak about your beacon as a new father, right? It really resonates well for me, right? To think about like what's coming next. What is that future going to look like when I'm not here, but my son still is, kind of, right? what are we leaving over? But also, right, we need people like Aurora that are doing all present, focusing. I don't care about the future much. I care about here, right now, right? And what's cool is that together as a balanced kind of intertwined system between the two of you and your approach. And of course, to kind of carry on, Jose is working really hard right here in the present right now. So let's kind of flip over into that and just kind of tell us a little bit about Reganic as an entity and what your mission and programming is. Let's dive in a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so Reganic was born, I think, in 2019 with kind of the struggle that you mentioned before, seeing this amount of plastic that was just around and without being any taken into account. Okay, let's do something better for this. So that was the moment that I kind of connected with very interesting people here in Münster, the city that I'm living in Germany. And I get to know my partners in crime right now, as we would say. We are a team of 3. It's a very small team. And what we're trying to do basically is creating a drop-in solution for conventional plastic. And by drop-in, I mean the fact that you don't need to change any industrial process in the production of the plastic in order to shift it from conventional plastic to bioplastic. So there's no more money that needs to be put into equipment or whatsoever. It's the same machineries can do the other kind of plastic, which is a good plastic.
Can you say that again?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to need to unpack that a little bit more. Like I'd love to hear a little bit more of like layman's terms, help us understand this, because this is super fascinating.
Yeah, the sustainability champion in us all is like, wait, it doesn't cost more money? Can other people hear this?
I need more.
I have some more things that you are going to be amazed by. So yeah, no worries. Okay, so basically just imagine a factory where conventional plastic is produced, right? It comes from fuel and then it becomes pellets, and then you can either injection mold it or whatever kind of way you want to produce a plastic. And the interesting thing of bioplastics is they come from nature, so they are inspired by elements of the nature, and they are already there. I mean, we don't see them, we don't think about them, but plastic is already in nature. Like resins from trees, for example, it's a good example of a way of saying, okay, there's plastic in the nature as well. So you have this huge factory, and then you just put another solution, another kind of plastic that can be done injection molded or blown away, like to make bottles or whatsoever. So it's literally, you don't need to do anything rather than just saying, okay, I embrace this, and there is this company that wants to produce our bioplastic, and that's it. You don't need any more money. It's basically the same process. It's literally the same process.
Wow. Okay. Okay, carry on. I'm excited to get to some of these other things that are gonna excite us. But yeah, take us a little bit more in depth to maybe the product a little bit and kind of where you're headed with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I guess most of you already know some bioplastics that are already in the market, such as PLA, which stands for polylactic acid. And PLA is produced through corn or cornstarch. And unfortunately, it has this bad thing that somehow the crops that are assigned to produce cornstarch also kind of affect the production of food for humanity. So it's kind of the process of, okay, how do we produce this bioplastic which are more environmentally friendly, but at the same time we're reducing the crops that can be assigned to feed people with this production of certain bioplastics. So with what Reganic is doing is we are using the exoskeletons of shrimps and marine life kind of in general, which is discarded anyway. I mean, when you buy shrimps, you don't get them with the exoskeletons, right? You just get them ready to be served. So the process is we create this kind of powder. We have a water-based solution, which is also very interesting because many of the plastics need to be done through synthesized process, which requires a lot of efforts. And ours is extremely easy to do. We're doing it in my kitchen, so that's as easy as it can get. And yeah, it's produced by this this chitosan, which you already mentioned, Chance. And actually chitosan comes from chitin, which is the second polysaccharide most abundant in the world. So first is cellulose, which we all know comes from, and you can do paper or whatsoever. And then you have chitin, which no one has idea, like no one knows about this. And it's the second most abundant one in the world. So okay, kind of we saw kind of a niche market already. We can focus on that, and that's where we do what we're doing right now. And because chitosan only can be act as a film coating, so to say, you can just create films with it. If you add different fibers, of course you can kind of change the structure of the biopolymer, and therefore you can do other things. And actually, here I have two samples of it. So this is added with coffee husks from roasteries, which also is discarded as waste. No one uses it. And then also coffee grounds from bars and coffee shops. That's also waste. No one thinks like, okay, sometimes people use it to kind of use it for their tomatoes or whatsoever because of the high nitrogen content in it. But it's just use of that, and if not, it's just discarded as waste. So our whole focus is trying to create a circular economy with the materials that are already out there. We are not producing something. We are not extracting something from the planet. We're just using waste to create drop-in solution, as I said, for many things. The nice things about this kind of biopolymers is that whenever you change the structure, you can create different kind of plastics. And I mean, there are already a lot of kind of plastics like PE, PET. I mean, they're just names and whatever. But you can achieve this structure of the conventional plastic and use it with bioplastics. So that's where we are right now.
So one question I have on this, and I don't, but maybe Aurora, I think you had a question. I might throw it to you first because mine is kind of a philosophical question around this. So if you've got something more specific,
yeah, I have some more technical questions.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's start there.
So then let's go back to two things I want to revisit that you said. One may be a little more philosophical, so we can push that down, or push that back to to later. But one is you mentioned about using the existing equipment. So one of the things that, as I occasionally watch a webinar or read an article on some new breakthrough that's similar to this, one of the challenges is there's a few things. One is traditional entrepreneurship. You need funding to scale, and you need access to the supply chains and blah, blah, blah. But part of it is also like the investment in changeover in infrastructure and manufacturing and things like that. So I'm very interested because it sounds like it'd be a lot more rapidly scalable if it can be used with existing equipment. So that would be one thing I want to address. And the other thing was you said something about, you talked about these materials that are just right under our noses that we're not even using. So I think I'd like to come back to that concept, because I think a lot of sustainability is seeing something through new eyes and being like, the solution is right here. Is no one seeing this? Like, am I really the first one to really connect this? So I'd love to come back to that, because I think there's sort of this like entrepreneurial sustainability champion spirit thing going on there that we can dive into. But let's talk about like the equipment and scalability and more of the little those technical pieces.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so well, one of the main problems of the plastic industry in general is the lobby that it's in within the oil consumption, right? So as long as oil is cheap, we're still going to be producing a huge amount of plastic, because why not? That's the conventional thinking of production. And because of that same reason, plastic prices are so low that bioplastic production requires some kind of new or kind of more specific tools to be done so, and therefore the price increases. So that is also not attractive to plastic producers, because like if I have this that costs me, I don't know, 10 cents per kilo and yours costs $2 per kilo, there's a huge difference. So of course it comes from the will of, do you still want to produce conventional plastic, or do you want to go into this kind of new upcoming or uprising strategy of producing bioplastics? It's really about that, and how we can address the market so it looks interesting for them at the same time. I have something prepared, like not prepared, but I have some other things that I will like to mention to you later on in the conversation. But there's also an economical benefit, not only for the producers, but also for companies, because at least here in Germany, if you produce or you sell something that has plastic as a packaging, you need to pay for that. Kind of like it's called
like EPR. You're talking about
extended producer responsibility.
So I'm not sure if you're aware, but we now have 2 states with plastic packaging EPR laws that were passed this year. Okay. So this is something that's now going to hit the US and become I think more prevalent. So maybe for those who on the call who are not familiar with EPR, I think it's a brief concept worth expanding or expounding upon. Can you tell us a little bit about what EPR is?
Yeah, EPR stands for Extended Producer Responsibility, and it basically just creates make people accountable for the packaging or the consumption of the products itself. So if you sell something that it's produced with packaging and it's plastic, then you have a certain fee. And if you sell products that are wrapped with paper, for example, it's also a different fee. And that kind of changes the game in terms of, okay, they are kind of forcing me to pay, but I can pay less if I use more kind of like sustainable approaches rather than just consuming plastic. Because in the end, and I also want to add this, we say, yeah, but plastic can be recovered, plastic can be recycled. Yes, in theory, that can be done. That's like that will be the ultimate huge thing. Like if you buy something and you just put it in a bin and you know it will be recycled, my heart will be like, okay, I'm done. I did my part. But the problem is that throughout the whole tons and tons and tons of plastic produced ever since 1950s, only 9% has been recycled. And recovered, okay, it's like 20%, but then the other 11% that is remaining is either incinerated or it's lost throughout the way, and it ends up, of course, it's going to end up in the oceans. So if we look at the point of, okay, plastic is something that can be done and can be recycled, yeah, we might want to think of that a little bit more and say whether it's possible or not and how we do it.
Mm-hmm. So to jump in on this, a couple of notes in this space. I really like, you use the term game, which actually triggered something for me. We today actually are releasing a new edition of our comic collections, and it's called Don't Hate the Player, Hate the Game, by a dear friend and a climate activist named Tom Marshall. And what he's talking about is that, you know, the system, the way it's designed is kind of bottom down, and we need to, top down. It needs to be bottom up in some ways. But the challenge that we have with kind of this free market neoliberalism sort of system that we have is that companies are often trying to follow the requests and the asks of the individual consumer. And unfortunately, right, that has created this pressure where like fossil fuel companies are saying, you know, well, make us change kind of thing. And, you know, in Spider-Man, they'd say with great power comes great responsibility, right? We need these people to be leaders and take us to better places and assume some responsibility and accountability for the negative outcomes that are happening here. And I was recently at Sustainable Brands in San Diego, and a lot of the metrics that have gone out to the marketplace asking consumers what they want, one of the biggest responses that the sustainable business community is getting is that consumers expect leadership and companies to do better, right? Do better, help us be able to make the right choices. Because asking the individual to make themselves crazy, trying to live a perfectly sustainable life so that the companies will shift, no good, right? It's frustrating. So, okay. All right, so I think I want to kick us into a mindful minute. Jose just hit us with a lot. And of course, Aurora and I only added more. So I do have a question that I want to pose for you to kind of think about during the break. I know, Jose, in our conversations kind of one-on-one, one of the things we talked a little bit about is the shrimp shells piece, and that you have some kind of ethical debate inside about supporting in kind of theory an industry that is doing some things that are unsustainable, right, in the fishing of shrimp, right? So I kind of want to dig into that and really work that out and come up with a solution that our sustainability friends on this conversation and that be listening to the recordings will be able to feel like, okay, like I get it, I understand, you know, and it's okay to have some conflict, but at the end of the day, still should go forward to try to fix an unsustainable system, right? So that'll be my question on the other end. And we're gonna go sit by Crazy Creek Falls in the Beartooth Mountains. See you on the other side in just a minute or two. Is a very beautiful place in the world that weaves between my amazing home state of Montana and our neighboring state, Wyoming. It's a really pretty place. If you ever get a chance, go check it out. Go to the summit. It's up at like 11,000 feet or so, I think. It is like being on top of the world. Okay, so Jose, we talked a little bit about kind of, right, responsibility at the top, and we're trying to identify individual responsibility, and hopefully those things kind of come in and meet in a balanced place, right? So as an individual, you're looking at this big system, you're seeing that there's an opportunity in an industry that is massive in the fishing industry and have some ethical conflict about that being sustainable or unsustainable, right? Should we be pulling so much out of the ocean, things like that. But there's an opportunity maybe to take an unsustainable system and make it more sustainable with an end of life solution, right? taking this wasted resource that is shrimp shells and turning it into a more sustainable thing. So kind of tell us a little bit about your philosophy around this and how you justify your human guilt, right? Because we all, as sustainability people, we all have a little bit of that. But help people kind of understand why this is a sustainable path forward.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, that's one of the biggest problems actually. Well, I became myself accountable for example, plastic bottles for drinking water, and then I just decided, okay, I'm gonna have my own aluminum water bottle that I can transport everywhere and I can always use it. So the problem, the thing with chitosan is, as you said, it comes from the shrimp, from shrimps, and we take advantage of the shrimp industry by utilizing the discarded waste that they have and produce another material with it. But as you said, of course, it's kind of we say to ourselves, okay, how do we do this if we're trying to save the planet? At the same time, we are extracting some elements from the environment to produce our material. And of course, we kind of have that we're in that level of, okay, we know that the amount of chitosan that we require is not pushing the shrimp industry to produce more shrimps. Therefore, we kind of have like, okay, we can sleep at night knowing that we're not pushing the kind of like the shrimp industry to produce more for us. But also we are thinking on how we can produce the same material without the intervention of animals. So how is it, can it be possible actually even to create a vegan-based chitosan? And surprise, surprise, nature gives and nature provides. The thing is that fungi, or the fungi rum in general, they produce chitosan. They produce chitin and chitosan separately. So if you look into mushrooms, you always take the upper part, right? The thing that we can see, which is like the mushroom itself. But behind that, there's called this thing, and it's very amazing. It's called mycelium, and it's kind of like this wide spread communication channel that fungi has to communicate between them, to say like, okay, kind of like there's more soil here, there's kind of like a dead animal here, we can go there and take advantage of it. Because if we look into fungi, they are the ultimate species in our world. Like they grow out of nowhere, they eat everything that is around them, and it produces, in the end, it just produces more biodiversity, and the ecosystem grows with it. So what we're looking at right now is trying to create vegan-based chitosan through the isolation of chitosan from mycelium. And what is also interesting enough is that you can produce other kind of bioplastic with mycelium itself, not isolating the chitosan, but just using the mycelium. So for example, when you buy a TV or when you buy an expensive wine, it always comes with this huge styrofoam that is just, it's the worst kind of plastic ever, right? You might know that kind of plastic because it's like a small white circle that is compact together. So there is a replacement in nature for this, and it's called mycelium. You add a little bit of fibers, you can also add coffee to it, and the mycelium grows until the shape that you give it, and then you have it ready. So the interesting thing is that we're not only creating kind of this material that it's from nature, but we're trying to make it symbiotic. So it's kind of having the mutual benefit relationship between us humans and our consumption and what we need to do everything. And also the environment, to say like, okay, if you produce a bioplastic that is biodegradable and in the end it breaks down in 6 months, it doesn't have microplastic, it doesn't require oil consumption, then just bring it to me. I am the environment. I will be able to digest this, create more and better soil, therefore improving the ecosystem that is going there. So instead of sending plastic into the oceans, why not just sending fungi into the ocean, and then it breaks down, and then it can even feed animals, like it can even feed fish. So that's where we are looking at right now. And of course we feel bad because we're taking advantage of the shrimp industry, but it's that, like, we're taking advantage of an industry that is already out there. We're not supporting it. We're just saying, okay, you produce waste, and we would love to take that and produce something for us.
And, you know, if we kind of look at this, you know, if we actually take a model from the mushroom kingdom a little bit, mushrooms, you know, they take advantage of a sad situation, right? Something has died often, right? Whether it be a tree that's fallen after couple hundred years, or an animal that has perished in the winter, right? They're going to rise up and they're going to take advantage of that to give way to new life. And the way I see this, and I think that what you're kind of speaking to, is that there's an opportunity to do that with the shrimp industry as well, right? Because that industry is not going anywhere, right? It supports a ton of jobs. It feeds a ton of people. Can we make some sustainable, balanced solutions and weave those into that system and do it much like the mushrooms would in nature and make it better, right? Make it more sustainable, address a weak point in the system itself. And that is what we would call a circular way, a circular economy. It's solving some broken loops, and there's Aurora's yes, kindred spirits here.
We also need to take this a small little three-letter concept that is LCA, which is life cycle analysis or life cycle assessment, which is also extremely important. Whenever you're producing something, you need to know, okay, where are my raw materials coming from? How long do they travel in order to get here so I can produce something? So that's something also that we're really we're kind of curious in the chitosan production from shrimps. So where are our shrimps coming from? Are they based in Spain? So is it like kind of local in Europe region-based shrimp industry, or is it in the Southeast Asia shrimp industry, which is, it has to travel a lot and therefore more CO2 emissions. And then in the end, if you want to produce something, the goal is to become net carbon zero. Like you don't create carbon emissions with your products, but you kind of either get to zero or you kind of relieve the CO2 emissions. And that's why we want to go into the mushroom chitosan. And I think there was a question in the chat. I think Carla posted it. Can you utilize the byproducts from the mushroom growing industry? Is there enough chitosan and spent mycelium bricks? Well, we are having kind of some communications with a mushroom producing company from Cologne, and we are trying to take advantage of their waste. It's enough for us, but I don't know if it's enough for the environment to produce all the plastic that can be done with chitosan. But it could be, it is possible. That's kind of like the end answer. It is possible, but then you need to see how and where can you extract and isolate this chitosan.
Okay, Aurora, do you have any questions before we go to the next piece of this?
Well, I'm not sure what you were planning for the next piece, but I would love to go back to this concept of there's this massive inventory of stuff we can use that's going through the traditional linear model. We figured out a way to get it into the circular economy and make money and help people. Like, it's just classic entrepreneurship, right? So what that makes me think about is a motto that I put on a lot of times when I'm training and speaking. I put this quote on a slide. I got it out of an entrepreneurship book that I used to teach out of like 15 years ago. And the quote, it was all about how entrepreneurs, which you are, a lot of us on this call are, or entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs sometimes are hesitant to share their ideas because they are afraid somebody could steal it. And this guy wrote this like over 20 years ago, and he was like, okay, at the time it was like 7 billion people on the earth. He said, you know, do you think out of 7 billion people, you're really the only person to ever think of this? And he says, better a mediocre idea with brilliant execution than a brilliant idea with mediocre execution. And that just resonates with me so much, which is why I just love focusing on implementation, execution, project management, things like that, because that's what brilliant execution is. So I'm just curious, when you think about being in this space of an eco entrepreneur or whatever, phrase or term you might want to use for yourself, does that resonate in terms of like, wow, there are all these materials that are just like literally under our feet, right? And literally in our trash cans. And what it takes to go from that to, let me tear this thing apart and see how it's made and what it's made of, to here's a viable, scalable, sellable product.
Yeah, okay, so Aurora, can you repeat the question, because I kind of I went through my mind and I got lost.
No, it's okay. It's for someone like you, it might be so second nature that you're like, I don't get it. You're asking me how I saw something in nature and figured out what to do with it, and why is that such a mystery? But for a lot of people, right, there's like this process of seeing and connecting these dots. Not a lot of people can turn that into a viable, scalable, sellable product. That's a whole different thing. You can have a brilliant idea. We're going to take mushrooms and make cups out of them, but to really make that brilliant execution, it requires funding and relationship building and project management and manufacturing setup and science. And so I'm just asking a little bit more about your entrepreneurial process and how you go from like, gosh, there's this totally obvious solution sitting out there, to you have a company, you're looking for funders, you're producing materials, that's not easy and common. So I guess I'm just looking for a little more of like, tell us about that part of doing this. Does that make sense? Sorry, I didn't set it up very well before. Okay.
Now I get it. So as I told you, the project started in 2019, so that's already 2 years from now. And the reason why it's taking so long is because we really want to make something exceptional out of this, and therefore I've read so many papers now from different industries, from different journals. I'm from nature. I'm a business. I studied business, and when I go into reading about biopolymers, it's like, what am I? I don't get anything. But sometimes you get something that is really interesting, and they say, okay, and then you take that and you take something else from another research paper. And building knowledge is one of the most interesting things that you can do in order if you want to solve a problem. Of course, you can do a brainstorm ideas and then just come up with something that is brilliant. But if you want to have something that is systematic and that can be proven, you need to go and do research. I worked at a research center for 2 years here in Münster, and that gave me a lot of insights on how to read, how to talk to people that are kind of like related about this topic. And yeah, also kind of what happened with the Navy is that it kind of gave me life lessons for life. And one of those is how to approach people. And the best way to approach someone is, hi, how are you? This is my name and I would love to talk to you. And a lot of people just don't say no to that, because it's like, okay, it's being honest. It's not trying to sell anything to me. He just want to have a conversation. And that's how we managed to get to talk with 2 CEOs from companies that I would never thought of having conversations with. And it was so natural, just like, hey, how are you? Yeah, kind of like we are competition, but we're not competition in reality. We're just kind of cooperating and make the world a better place. And for funding is extremely difficult. I come from another country, so the language is a barrier, of course. The bureaucracy in different countries come in different sizes and shapes, and of course Germany is very kind of known because of that. And we're trying to get a funding from the government to at least work in this project for a year. Of course, if that doesn't happen, that's not going to limit us, and that's not going to say, okay, we're done with this. That's just going to make us find more solutions and try to find more investors that can actually be willing to give us the money and support us. We know that this industry in general is huge, the plastic industry, and the amount of money that investors can get out of this it's extremely interesting. And as you said, kind of like you need to break apart. And as I told you before, I used to kind of break my toys because I wanted to see what make them tick. Whenever you're trying to find a solution for something, you need to break it down and tear it apart and see, okay, this goes with that, but also kind of can go with this part. And then when you finally have the puzzle, which is not in the same way that you saw the puzzle, it makes so much sense. And then you kind of connect the dots so easily that in the end, it's like, okay, I have a great idea just by looking at the details. If you pay attention to details, everything will make your life easier. Just pay attention to details.
Wow.
Hi,
Yes.
could I jump in on this conversation? I don't have a hand raise button. I don't know why.
So Sujata, we will actually be opening up to audience participation in about 10 minutes. Is that okay? Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I might have to jump off and jump back in, but anyway,
Okay.
it's okay.
Well, if you do have to go, we can bring you up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Jose, I think we're kindred spirits. When I was a kid, I had the same desire to break toys. And I did break a lot of toys. And I do remember, like, you know, on weekends, we would go to, you know, homes of other families. And if I broke the girls' toys, there was always crying and drama. But the boys, you know, I convinced them. They were easy to convince. I'd just say, look, don't you want to know what's in there? And they would say, yeah, you know. And of course, when you break a toy, it's broken forever. It's not like, I think people expected me to magically put it back together. But anyway, the other thing that I wanted to say is that I feel right now with the whole plastic situation, people like yourself are the leaders in the space, the innovators, right? And I would say in about 10 years' time, with the new generation coming up, I mean, kids these days are far beyond their years. I mean, you know, I have no doubt that in the next 10 years, like a 10-year-old can put together a whole little company. You know what I mean? I'm sure they would need some help, but they're certainly doing it now. And it may become something normal. I mean, that's another topic, and I'm not saying that's great, but I'm just saying that the capability that the youth have, given what they are born with in terms of what they inherit, in terms of technology and how the world runs, the tools that they have available at their fingertips are pretty much tools that they have as soon as they know how to use their finger to press a button. So, and then lastly, I wanted to say, I absolutely love the work that you're doing, but alongside with that, until we can bridge the gap with the plastic, you know, for example, with my business, you know, I have a tagline called Just Do One Thing, and Just Do One Thing focuses around plastic awareness just for the normal person that goes to the beach. So what does that mean? Like, that means just pick up your trash, make sure your things don't blow away. Don't take Legos to the beach with your kids. Teach your kids to clean up other people's plastics. So that's, I guess, you know, for lack of better words, maybe a very low brow or low level way, but that is also part of the awareness. So I think that that type of awareness combined with the new things that you're doing in your space can be a great way to promote and include everyone, because then there's someone for people that are on another level that want to do more, but hey, there's something for you at the very basic level. And if people can begin to think about their participation in helping with this plastic problem in that way, then I don't think people will be as overwhelmed. Okay, that was my share.
Jose, anything that sparks in there for you?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things is a saying. I don't know if it's also in English. This is just Spanish coming in translation into English. Is before you can run, you need to learn how to walk, and that means creating like this small little things that build up in order to achieve something great. And I think that's also something what Sujata just trying to say, like, just make small things. To go through a walk on the beach and collect plastic. It doesn't matter if it's not yours or if it is. Just make those small things that create a consciousness in yourself, and then you will have a great a great transition towards becoming more sustainable in the end.
Jose, you translated there to English. Do you want to share it in Spanish for our Spanish listening friends?
Yeah. Antes de correr, hay que aprender a caminar.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, I want to do a quick kind of reset here. We've had a few new people join into the conversation. We're going to kick over into the second part of the conversation. I actually love where you took us on that, Aurora, because kind of that was eco-entrepreneurship, talking a little bit about what that journey of being able to look into nature and come up with a solution that we can apply in the human world is really good. So we're going to move over into part 2. We will take about a 3-minute break and go sit next to Flathead Lake. It was actually my sunrise this morning. There's some ducks and birds that make an appearance. It's lovely. A little music in honor of some style of music that I know Jose loves with the guitar. Couple of notes, housekeeping things. So for anyone that does have to jump out at the end of the hour, that happens. Of course, please feel free to do so if you need to go on about your busy days. Please note that we are going to be releasing this conversation, including the second part, in a recorded format on YouTube and to Spotify and Apple Podcasts as an audio experience as well. To get access to that, you can go to our link tree. It's linktree/Viridescent, which there is a dot between the TR and the EE. And that will also open you up to getting a sustainability alter ego. We today are joined by Jose Miguel Gutierrez, aka the Symbiotic, and I'm the designer, Aurora's the change maker, and these are sustainability identities to try and inspire us to rise up to help save the world. And everybody has a change-making hero inside of them, so we like to help people meet that person and then take them on a journey to do that. We will be releasing some workshops in January of 2022 that will take your alter ego and you on an experience of professional development to becoming the change maker that you want to be. The first series of workshops is going to teach emotional intelligence, design thinking, and storytelling. You will even get to appear in an immersive sustainability story in comic form, and who knows what other kind of fun things. So if anybody's interested in accessing those things, again, go to our link tree and sign up for our email experience. And that is the first link on there. Again, linktree/Viridescent, the dot between the TR and the EE, and the link should be in the chat. I think the researcher will pop that in there for us. Okay, so let's take a couple of minutes. We're gonna go sit by the lake in Flathead Lake, Montana, USA, and we'll see you on the other side where we open it up to the stage for anybody to come up and join the conversation. Get up, stretch, grab a drink, get relaxed, and we'll see you in a couple minutes. welcome back, everyone. Yes, that was sunrise this morning. I wasn't planning on doing that, but I know that the Symbiotic here, also known as Jose, here with us, favorite nature element for your alter ego is water. And so there's a theme of water today. And I saw that as I was walking down, taking my morning walk. I was like, yeah, we got to bring this to Jose and to everyone. So, all right. So we are going to open up the stage. We'd love to welcome up anybody in the audience to come up and join us in conversation. So we are in the VIRIVERSE, which is our immersive sustainability world that brings mentorship and storytelling to sustainability champions, change makers, any human that's just kind of interested in any of these things. And we love to build what we call a human mycelium, which is a collective intelligence to save the world. So come join us. Let's jump up on stage and have a conversation. And I'll pose a question that can kind of kick us into the conversation. So, Jose, what is your one piece of advice as we kind of bring people up on stage with us? What's your one piece of advice to people that are wanting to do something special, change makers, and maybe think about them from like an entrepreneurship or an entrepreneurship space. They want to be creative. They want to make change. So as we bring people up on stage, why don't we just have you kind of talk and we'll get people organized and then we'll jump into a group discussion.
Yeah, sure. But first of all, Chance, can you give a huge shout out to my mom and my dad who are here and also my best friend. So shout out to Susana, my mother, Germán, my father, and Felipe Tapia, my best friend. And I just want to acknowledge them because, well, we're all touched by people in our world. In our time, like wherever we're going, and whatever you see here, the person that I am, I could have not made it without the support of my parents. So huge thanks to them. I am the man who I am now because of you. And yeah, I'm bringing sustainability and kind of just like this essence of creating a better world just by the image and the role that you gave me. That's the first thing. Thank you for that moment. And what would I tell someone who wants to become a sustainable champion? You said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, learn that failure is not a bad thing. Whenever you face kind of like a hill or a small stone in your road, doesn't matter. Just go along with it. Learn how to surf the waves that life gives you. Surround yourself with good people. That's, I think, one of the most important things. You cannot do things by yourself, and that's actually also because one of the reasons why I chose the quote that I did for this event. Together we can do so little, but I mean, alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. Just surround yourself with good people, with positive energy, and just and kind of like this conversation that we were having with Aurora, kind of the fact that you don't need to focus on a huge problem. If you look into details will give you more information than what you're looking for in a broad and a huge holistic approach. Always pay attention to details. I really like to emphasize that because I pay a lot of attention to details. And I think that's one of the most important things in life. Doesn't matter if it's sustainability or not related, always pay attention to details, always see what's going on with people, always see what's going on with the environment, and pay attention to the small things that might make a big, huge change and therefore create a great impact in life.
Very well said. And I guess to follow your lead, Viridescent is a business, but we're a business that loves family and supports family and does our work for our family. So I will say I love my wife, Ryan, and my son, Milo. Aurora, I don't know if there's somebody you want to shout out a little bit of love, proclaim your love for somebody out there.
Proclaim my love. It's funny because during the pandemic, I've lived in this small town in the Southeast where I grew up, and I moved back here a couple of years ago, a year before the pandemic. And so I jokingly say that my social life consists of hanging out with two people in their 70s because I spend most of my social time with my parents. And so, as some of you know, the target industry that Chance and I were previously working on, I still focused primarily on events and hospitality. So COVID pretty much decimated my income, like really, like I made as much last year as I did when I was like 16 years old. And so the reason I'm not living under a bridge is my dad. I mean, my dad has just always been, he's come to my rescue. And I lost my iPad on the plane last week to IMEX, and he has a brand new, beautiful iPad because my dad is awesome and provides for me. And I can't imagine life without what they've made possible for me. So yes, absolute shout out for them.
We have another family man I know for sure that loves his family dearly too. Our dear friend Nick, aka the Energy here in the VIRIVERSE, wants to come up and join us in conversation and has a question for Jose, I believe. So Nick, join us, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and we'll jump in with Jose.
Thanks, Chance. Can everybody hear me?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay, good. This is a new headset.
I was going to say you win the award for the most badass headset.
Really? Well, I just wanted to say hi, and to introduce myself. First off, I'm very inspired by what everyone is accomplishing here in Viridescent and Aurora. You are such a wonderful addition. I've joined in a few times, and I'm always encouraged by the amount of conversation that is had in these meetings. 2 hours is not easy, but it seems that you guys make it happen very easily. So I'm very encouraged by that. But I'd like to just say, tying in with sustainability being quite personal, Jose, you use family and love as a motivator, and we are talking about that being an inspiration. I'm curious, like, how do you feel about tying love for yourself with sustainability? And by that I mean a lot of what I tie my sustainability focus to is that my own personal development, my love for myself, the life that I currently have. And I know it sounds brash because we talk about giving more to others and thinking largely about the planet, but what about your personal life, and how does that motivate you when you focus about yourself? Do you feel that there is a need for a love that is strictly tied to you and your development that encourages you to innovate and to push forward?
Being a sustainable human from within. Yes.
That's what I'm going for. Yeah, that's directly where I'm coming from, where I try to find my focus and direction in sustainability is directly tied to my progressive life and just bettering my life, because I believe that if I better life, I will better the world around me.
Okay.
Yeah, so also using some of the words that Aurora used in the beginning, I also like myself to be challenged and to face challenges. And I think that's kind of one of the main, thrusters in my life to become sustainable is always trying to see how things can be done better, and how can just this consumption of knowledge can be translated into something that is tangible and that you can provide it and you can give it to society as a gift. So I also mentioned before, kind of like this altruistic behavior, or more kind of like thinking through empathy, having this empathy lens before anything. Of course, love ourselves is great. It's something really important. But for me, it goes beyond and transcends my own persona and just goes out to everyone that can enjoy what I'm trying to build right now. I think that things are better when they are shared, and therefore also this kind of way of becoming sustainable is, hey, I'm doing this. Do you also want to be part of this? Do you want to grow with me? Do you want to grow together? And I think kind of that resembles my personal love for myself, is basically intellectual growth with this this coming together with people and kind of creating this huge circle that we can all provide and support each other.
I that really resonates with me. I have to say that because my relationship with Chance has been very personal over the last 2 years. But what I always told people was that timing was so vital when we first met, that Chance was trying to change the world while I was trying to change my life. And as we kind of came together as friends, and he became my mentor in that way, I saw potential in that. I saw that the camaraderie, and we aligned very well in that way. And together we did some amazing sustainable things for the convention center, which I work at. And I am intrigued by this plastic, the biodegradable plastic. I'm hopeful that we can see it in the convention industry someday, although I know it's just quite a long shot, but I encourage you to just keep working and pushing for your dream. My last question for you, the one that I originally had, was your time in the military really encourages me as well, because I'm a huge military guy. I am encouraged. I'm intrigued by asking you, what influence did the military, your time in the service, have? I know that the ocean was a big part of your life, but what influence did the military have on you to become like this leader in the sustainability space? Is there some sort of a discipline that was obtained there, or this pay attention to the details really resonates with me as well? Did that come from your time in the service?
I wouldn't say it comes from there, but it most definitely created some habits in my life that I still go through. Of course, not the cold showers in the morning. That is absolutely off the table. But the small things. I mean, again, let's go again with the small details. Making your bed every morning creates kind of this habit that your room is not only your room, but it's also kind of a temple. If you treat it that way, and if you start with your bed, then you kind of can build up from there. When I joined the Navy, I was only 17. I was really into sports, and they gave me the opportunity to become the best potential that I could have done. And without them, I couldn't have done it. But then it was kind of like this point where I felt very conflicted on the why. On why is he giving me this command, and why specifically him? Why is it not possible by other person? Why can I not say something and put it into like the hierarchy? And that's also one of the reasons why I decided to step away from the Navy. It was because I kind of I support, and I think it's very interesting the kind of people that are there. And you need to have a specific kind of mentality that is only can be provided by the people that are there. But kind of like that mentality was not part of me. I couldn't fit in perfectly, and therefore I decided, okay, I need to create my own path. I need to become kind of like my own officer in chief of my own life and have my own decisions run by myself. And after all, like if I do the math, it's always positive. You always come, if you always turn out good things that you can make out of every kind of circumstance. So yeah, the small habits always created myself something that I can be better and just become a better person every day that I wake up. And that also comes from there. Thank you, and thank you to all those people that made me do a lot of push-ups. It worked.
Well, thank you for your service, and yeah, I'd just like to say, I'm glad that your family could be here today. You're truly a leader and very wise at your age. So, thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
So if I could jump in, Chance here, Nick, you spoke to potential of like your and I's relationship, but the only potential is yours, my friend, and you are reaching it. And I would say the same thing about Jose, just wow, absolutely wow. And sometimes sustainability champion needs to have a mirror held up to them so that they can be reminded how awesome they are, because your response to Nick's question about a sustainable individual was one of like, it's not really about me. I'm trying to give away and support others and help and, kind of glow. One of our conversations recently had a lot of conversations about glow coming from within. And I would credit Rose Kaz from Lady Boss International, of course, Aurora, who talked about the idea of taking light, which comes down on us and lights us up, but then we glow from within, and you're sharing your glow, Jose, with the world, and that is why you are the symbiotic here in the VIRIVERSE. So Aurora, where do you kind of want to go? And of course, again, offer for anybody that wants to kind of join us up on stage and participate in the conversation. We'd love to have you. Nick, feel empowered to just kind of converse with us here, but Aurora, where do you want to go?
So Jose, I think, or Guti, I love that. That's so sweet. Since your parents are on the phone, I'm going to call you Guti. Make it a very familiar thing. So, when you think about, it's so funny because anytime anybody asks me the question, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'm like, no. I'm so an in the moment person. I don't have a 5-year plan.
Mindfulness is good.
Right. And so, and for better or worse, right? I mean, there are disadvantages to not having the 5-year plan, and there are advantages to being a little bit more live in the moment. But, there, as an entrepreneur, you're solving today's problems, but you're trying to think of like the vision of where you want to go. You have a vision. So we talked about sort of like what caused you to think about this, the origin story, but what's the vision? Where do you see, I hate to use the cliche, cheesy question, where do you see yourself and or Reganics in 5 years? What's next for you, and what do you feel you most need to get to the next step towards that vision?
Well, I think whenever you're working in a project, there's never enough people. You need support. You always need to work. I'm not a good person just working on my own. I tend to procrastinate way too much when I'm just on my own. So I need people that just are there to support, to talk, to communicate. And well, actually, this is one interesting question, because we had this conversation with my team a few days ago, and it's kind of like, okay, where do we see each other in a few years from now? And we believe that there are things that need to be addressed, and not only solve the plastic problem. And therefore, we really want for Organic to become a research and development company, and where we kind of work with AI alongside, trying to see what we can take from nature and put it into our society. So basically kind of have this biomimicry inspiration from nature, having to see all these kind of things like, okay, I don't know how Velcros were invented, for example. That's a very good explanation. I cannot give the story, unfortunately, because I'm not really good at storytelling. But you see that there are a lot of problems in our days of society that can be solved with nature. We need to see deeper into nature and kind of see all the interactions between all the ecosystems and how they work, enable for us to make our worlds work. Basically, we're kind of here living in Earth just by chance, and taking into account that there are endless kind of possibilities of worlds, and we are living here right now, and we are not doing our best efforts to make it better. If anything we're doing is just kind of creating more pollution. So Reganic and myself, I see a bright future in which we are solving humanity's problems.
That's a beautiful vision, because it has like the big, like, solving humanity's problems, but also you're able to hone in and say, we're a research institution versus a cup maker, right? So like, I think you've got both these going. And by the way, I did a quick Google because I love the story behind the invention of Velcro. So for anybody who's not sure of that story, I popped in a little link. It's especially from the dog angle of that. And as a dog mom, I just had. So that's what's in the link.
Aurora, is that also speaking to like the cockleburrs and like the?
Yeah, exactly. It's the guy who, he basically took his dog for a walk, and he had the socks and the dog and everything. They get the little burrs on them, and that's how Velcro was invented.
So it's amazing. That is biomimicry, for anybody that is not familiar with that term. Biomimicry being able to follow the model of something that happens in nature and apply it to the human experience in some way. I'm going to bring Paul Salinger up here to join us on stage here in a second. One thing that I wanted to kind of speak to around this Velcro piece, a sustainability beacon for everybody. Go to nature, like every day if you can, somewhere, even if it's just a plant. Go sit by a plant and just enjoy it. Just look, be mindful, because who knows what might happen, right? The plant might fall over and fall out, and something about the way it discards might provide you some crazy insight to help you save the world. We just have no idea what is found. And of course, if you go out into nature, into the backcountry, out on the water, you observe animals and watch the way they interact with their environment. There's so much that nature can teach us, because it is the sustainable system that humans are trying to figure out how to build. We already have one. Let's just follow its lead and integrate into that. Okay, Paul Salinger, feel free to introduce yourself and say hey, and then whatever you want to share.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Paul Salinger. I'm the provocateur in the VIRIVERSE. I also work heavily in the event sector that Aurora and Chance also have been working in. So I just wanted to say, Jose, congratulations, first of all, on, what you're doing. I think, what you're doing is a great example of, the kind of innovation and the kind of, thinking that is going on in the world right now that nobody hears about, and it's all under the radar. We're so embedded in kind of the doom and gloom of climate change and climate science, and the disappointment coming out of Glasgow and all of that. But people don't realize that there's amazing stuff going on. People like you, doing really interesting stuff. However, I do want to ask a quick question for you, and just a little bit of a follow-up from the last question. In terms of where you want to go, I love the idea of turning your company into a research company as well as a manufacturer of product. My question, I guess, is thinking about it in terms of scale. How do you scale something like this, and how do you and what are the barriers that you feel like you're kind of coming up against in sort of the entrenched industry of the plastic industry, and the relationships that are built there with the oil and gas industry and just everything that goes into the plastic industry? How do you feel like you can overcome that and scale what you're doing?
That's a very interesting question. And it's true. I mean, it's really tough to fight against giants, but I was raised in a Catholic family, so I always kind of go through this kind of whole histories of the Bible, and having the story between David and Goliath is how to win when you're so you're so small and you have this kind of huge fight against giants. And the interesting thing is that you need to find their Achilles tendon and see what is their weakness and attack directly to that. So as I mentioned a few minutes ago, well, actually an hour, or I don't know, there's a lot of economical benefits for companies that produce or that are creating this bioplastic products. So if you go into the EPR, or extended producer responsibility side, the companies need to pay a certain amount of money for every product that they sell. But this fee decreases in terms of what kind of packaging you're using. If you're using plastic, it's a lot. If you're using paper, it's not that much. But then there's this small little thing that's called composites, which are biodegradable, that are 100% bio-based, and they are extremely cheap. So if you tell companies like, hey, if you use our plastic, you will pay less money. That's a no-brainer for everyone. Like, companies want to get more money as they can, of course, and then plastic producers can also get money from that, because then it's a trend to go and kind of do this transition to composite materials that they are biodegradable and therefore are not in the world. And also kind of like what Chance was saying in this kind of bottom-down approach and us asking the companies to have sustainable solutions, well, this is a sustainable solution. This is something that companies can take and can use. And as I said before, there's a drop-in solution, therefore there's no need to change the manufacturing process, but it's only need to be introduced into the process. So of course, there's a lot of other problems, of course, regulations, scalability of the product, how we can work how can we work with the material and make it consistent. There are many questions that we're trying to solve right now. We are focusing on them. Of course, we don't have all the answers and we don't know all the questions, but we're trying to go step by step and trying to solve all the ones that we can in the meantime. So yeah, that's basically it. And about the manufacturing process and scalability, of course, it's kind of something that we are aware, but the fact that we are using waste as a raw material for our plastic, that means that as long as there's waste, there's plastic. Whereas in conventional plastic, there's oil, but there might not be at some point. So we're going into a transition that we're kind of like fighting against oil and putting us over the oil production that is now happening.
You know, something interesting to me about this conversation, and it makes me also think about something we often talk about in events when we're trying to drive change, and we're trying to figure out, you talked about the Achilles heel, we're also trying to figure out like where are the levers where that we know we can pull a lever and it's going to have the most impact. So we often talk about the customers, right? So if we can't get hotels to be sustainable just because it's the right thing to do, can we show them that customers are choosing hotels and because of this, right? And for years, the data on that has been, there's been a disconnect, right? Because you can survey people and sustainability still falls way below location, price, safety, cleanliness, amenities, blah, blah, blah. And it's not that they don't care, but it's like, okay, well, you're comparing, you're asking them to rank it. So of course, all those things are going to be more important. And then there's also this whole willingness to pay, right? So people say these things are important, but they're not necessarily doing them. And I was going through some old emails. Some of you already know this, I'm sure, but I was going through some old emails yesterday, like catching up on sustainability newsletters that I hadn't read for like 7 or 8 months. And I saw where earlier this year, Salesforce came out with a new, like there's this 4-page clause that's going in all of their contracts now on climate, with expectations of reporting on climate, like tell us what you're doing about climate, what, you know, and that's huge, right? I mean, Salesforce is basically now adding to all their contracts, and the VP of sustainability at Marriott has sort of, you know, working in with them closely, and the VP of Marriott sustainability at Marriott said, you know, when we tell the hotel properties you should be doing these things, it's coming from corporate, and you know, but now that Salesforce is saying here it's in we've got a 4-page clause in a contract, it's going to be a game changer, right? And so I'm just wondering, when you look at this landscape and you see like people are, you know, holding tight to petroleum, there's all of these different suppliers, and you're like here in a supply chain that goes both directions. Where do you feel the lever points are when you think of that sort of Achilles heel? What like one decision like that Salesforce thing would be sort of the domino that tips the rest of it, and you can kind of go out into the world and say, see, you need this now. What do you see that as, that tipping point?
So our initial product with Reganic is, as Chance mentioned before, is a biodegradable microplastic-free pheromone dispenser for wine industry. And the reason why we chose this is, as I said before, we need to walk before we can run. And it's the normal transition that is happening in Europe for organic farming, right? So we are extremely aware of all these problems with the pesticides and how pest controls are being used and implemented in farms. so this transition to organic farming it was kind of like the perfect fit for the ring. And we are seeing now that this whole transition as a society and as a group or a cohort of Europe, as Europe is working, they implement these laws everywhere. So it's like, okay, we're gonna do organic farming in Germany. Okay, let's do it everywhere. Okay, we're gonna ban plastic in France. Okay, let's start banning plastic in every single country of the European region. So politicians need to be accountable. Like they need to kind of raise their voice and say, okay, we need to do this. We need to make the world a better future. Of course, Glasgow was not optimal for that. But us as people with this force of Fridays for Future, this whole massive riots, not riots, but just like this whole movement of people asking and demanding for things is really relevant. And as more people are in the streets asking for something, the easier it might get for it to receive it in the end. So I think we all need to kind of understand where we are, what do we want to do, and how can we work together in order to accomplish this more sustainable way.
So what a call to action. I think very appropriate right now, given the time that we're in, right? Having COP26 having just kind of taken place. And unfortunately, the takeaways, those call to actions have been a little lukewarm, a little bit mild at best, right? And so actually we have a wonderful question from Beverly in the chat about how can we convince the UK to take this on, as this is what we need. So I want to pose that question. We're going to take another mindful minute here in just a minute and kind of think about that. And I think the last part of the conversation, I'd love to lean into how can we be activistic? We're actually releasing an immersive comic today that is written and told by a climate activist, because we need to be somewhat active and not radical to a detrimental place, but we need to start kind of disrupting and transforming a little bit. And if we look to COP26, 26, we've had 26 of these. And this one in particular, one of the big wins was that they talked about coal, that there was some stuff on coal, that the actual word coal was used, right? I mean, good golly, right? It's a really, really difficult thing. 26 of these things. While we are living in an era of climate change, this is the climate decade right now, and we're just getting to the conversation to formally talk about coal. Now, why is that, right? Well, of course, there's a lot of jobs attached to coal. And so one of the things we need to be identifying is how can we make transitions rather than tearing down these things. So I kind of want to talk about that on the other end, is how can we be activistic? How can we call to our governments to implement change and even some regulation, but doing it in a way where businesses can rise up and meet those challenges without people losing jobs, livelihoods, all those things, right? So let's take a minute. We're going to go back to Flathead Lake, and this time you are sitting on a paddleboard, and we'll see you in a minute or two. All right, so welcome back, everybody. We are about 20 minutes of conversation left, and then we'll kind of wrap to a close here. So we'll maybe do 10 to 15 minutes of group conversation around this. And it's a big topic. So we're going to save the world in like 10 minutes as a group here. All right. So let's talk about how can we create a balance system where government is being more proactive, being more accountable, where leadership in businesses are being more proactive, being more accountable, and individuals are actually heard, right? What can individuals do to reach those in power? And throw it to Jose first, but then open mic to everybody else to jump in as well.
Yeah, well, it's something really interesting. And also taking the word that Beverly posed in the chat, ecocide, is something that we really need to be aware of, right? We often see native people or indigenous people as either lazy, either not smart, or just taking into account that we see them as something that is off this world. But somehow the problem is the other way around, right? I mean, for centuries and thousands of years, different kind of civilizations had this extreme, profound connection with Earth, right? So I'm talking about Mayas, Aztecs, Incas, and whatsoever. So I can talk only because of what I know as my Latin roots, right? But there was kind of like this understanding of, okay, we are living in this planet, but we are not the owners of the planet. So how we can make this kind of stop? And I think one of the most important parts is consumption. Being like mindful consumption, right? It's about what you want versus what you need, and whether this will suit your needs in terms of, okay, will I be satisfied, or will I just buy an iPad because I feel like I want to have an iPad, but I really don't need it. So this also creates pollution, and in the end kind of creates this whole sphere of contamination in general. So being aware of our consumption will, of course, 100% decrease the amount of CO2 emissions that are produced by us as individuals, and at the same time produced by companies who will notice a huge decrease in their sales and therefore will produce less. It kind of has like a 1+1 math equation, but it's really difficult to understand and to kind of put into your mind, like, okay, I need to stop buying clothes. And if I buy clothes, then I can just go secondhand. It's not bad. I love thrift shopping. I do it all the time with my mom, and it's one of our kind of daily routines when we're together. And it's interesting because you can find new clothes in a secondhand store, and it's exactly the same benefit. You don't get less, but you feel like, oh, I'm not going into H&M or Zara, and I'm not spending $120 for a coat. I'm just spending $20. Do I feel bad about that? No, I feel extremely happy.
So to add on to that too, when you make those individual choices, lean into this idea of a bottom up, push up, pressure upward. When you make these choices, right, the encouragement is tell the companies that you're making these choices and why, and maybe even offer them a little breadcrumb, like of how they can get back to you, how they can create something that might be of interest to you, what a sustainable thing you might buy is. I think can be really, really, really powerful. One of the things that the sustainability movement is becoming, or has been guilty of, there's two actually that intersect one another often or run parallel to one another, is green hushing, which is a little bit a newer kind of phrase. So green hushing being that you don't brag about what good you're doing. And some of that is because you're scared of cancel culture, which fair in some ways, right? But the best way to combat that is to also say what you're not good at, right? And that's where the greenwashing piece comes in. So talk about what you're good at, talk about what you're bad at too, as a company. And the best way for companies to be kind of hit with this idea of reward, oh, hey, we're doing something good, and our consumers, our customers are saying, yeah, good job, guys. Or we're doing something bad, and your consumers or customers saying, like, really, like that, what are you guys doing, right? So I think it's really important to tell them about the choices you're making and do it with a story and explain why you're making this choice. And hopefully you can start to create stories, impressions, and start to inspire some of the leadership from these companies to try to win you back. And businesses are competitive. Like, don't be sensitive, don't disregard it, don't not listen as a business leader. Listen to people when they rise up to talk to you, when they stand up to you, because they're trying to teach you something. They're trying to help you be better, and the planet needs better, right? Just simply do. What else does anybody have? You know, if we try to kind of be activistic, right? And we're trying to stand up to those in power and get them to see it, right? Taking a few few notes from Greta, I suppose.
Well, yeah, so I posted.
Yeah,
I put a link in the chat. You know, if you're a New York Times subscriber, you may be able to find it in another place. But Thomas Friedman had an interesting op-ed column yesterday where he talked about we need more Gretas, but we also need more Elon Musks. And I think, you know, Jose, what you're doing is on the Elon Musk side of things. But yes, we need both, right? We need we need people out in the streets as they were in Glasgow. We need, you know, the Gretas of the world to continue to push from the bottom up, as you said, Chance. But we do need that innovation piece. And I want to push back just slightly on what Jose said about, you know, buying secondhand clothes versus buying new clothes. Yes, there's, you know, some issues in the fashion industry, but there are people in the fashion industry that are trying to do better things. And the thing is that we do actually need economic activity. You know, we can't just stop economic activity altogether. That would not be a positive outcome for humanity. But yes, there are ways that we need to start looking at it from an activist perspective in terms of, yeah, pushing on the various industries in terms of what we as consumers, you know, want them to take into account from a sustainability standpoint. But we can't discount the fact that we do need some economic activity to sustain ourselves.
So on that note, Jose, what do you think kind of the line is between changing culture around buying and purchasing and helping support a transition to a sustainable economy, right? Because there is this kind of, well, there's multiple philosophies about how we do this. You know, Buckminster Fuller says that you can't change the existing reality by fighting the system from within it, right? You have to break out and build something new. And that's kind of where we went with the VIRIVERSE and VIRIDESCENT, this platform we're creating, is kind of trying to break out and do something new. But our approach has changed slightly. Then we want to walk right into the middle of the matrix, right into the middle of the system, and influence a circular model, right? Spin all these capitalistic walls that we have between us and our planet and living in balance into a more circular economy. What do you think about that on the individual level, Jose, and kind of how can we work at that in a way that supports economic development, but also allows us to change some of our buying behaviors? Because the consumption culture, huge problem, right? But we've got to find some bridge somewhere in there. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think I can say two words, well, three actually. One is empathy, being aware of your consumption habits, being aware that you are in a more advantageous position than others. For example, like first world countries produce even way more, I would say, an abysmal amount of trash and waste rather than third world countries. However, plastic ends up in third world countries. So you see the Southeast Asia, you see Africa, you see South America in general is starting to pollute right now, actually. So being aware of how our consumption habits reflect an impact not only on us and the people that are around us, but also the people that are on the other side of the world and that we do not know of them, but therefore we're also creating an impact and a negative impact. And then related to this kind of like this economical behavior and how to not decrease economic growth, but at the same time creating the sustainable impact that we need in the world. I think this term with the Homo economicus, or like the transition from Homo sapiens sapien to Homo economicus, which is kind of like related to, okay, we need to make money. The more money we have, the better we are. and we kind of climb into this social ladder in the end that is not beneficial. I mean, for us and for our egos, it's perfect. Like if the more money we have, the better. But in the end, money is not going to give you, it's not going to give you extra life. It's not going to solve plastic pollution. I mean, we've seen it already. Even Elon Musk said, if you can find a way to solve CO2 emissions, I will give you $6 billion. That's a lot of money, but in the end, it's just money. It's pure paper. So we need to kind of like go into a step further and not. I mean, 2020 was a very bad year, right? I mean, COVID hit us all. We realized that we don't need that many things. I mean, we can live a minimalistic life without being minimalistic ourselves, right? We just don't need to have one bed and one chair. No, that's not the point. But we need to be empathic and like just create empathy with the ones that we do not know versus the ones that we already know, because that's kind of okay. But if we look into the other side of the world, we're not paying attention to them, and neglecting people as a society in the end creates poverty in the years before. And now it's not only poverty, but it might create bigger impacts that we won't be able to fix just with the problems that caused them. So I think that we need to be very careful in terms of how we're going to evolve as a society, so that we don't make the same mistakes that we've been doing over and over again as society throughout time.
Paul, any response before we throw it over to Nick?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you, and I was not advocating necessarily for, just having more money for everybody, but I just, kind of like to Chance's point, there's a bridge there. There's a way in which, we do need to change our consumption patterns, no question about it. And if we can provide that empathy that you talked about, great, but we do need to start figuring out how do we actually change the consumption behavior and patterns that we are sort of locked into, that come with convenience and efficiency and all the kind of like things that have gotten created to where people are just more comfortable with, consuming more and more, and not really thinking about and being mindful about what they are consuming. So, I mean, I completely agree with you. I just, I was just sort of pointing out that we do actually need some economic activity, and not to try and all get rich, or have a lot of money, but to actually, sustain each other in a positive kind of way.
And on that note too, Jose, thinking about our conversation earlier about producer responsibility, right? Right, convenience culture, consumption culture in so many ways isn't going to go away because life is getting busier, it's speeding up. We're overloaded by digital, boom, boom, boom. I'm surprised I haven't heard a notification from somebody somewhere during this conversation, right? Fix the problem. You have the resources, you have the power as producers, as company leaders, as governments. If you want to keep the money flowing, gotta solve these problems, because if climate starts to hit us, the money is going to drop out from underneath us. And to the other side of this coin, and then we'll go over to Nick, is we are seeing money is a construct. It's just a thing that we decided has value to it. Look at the cryptocurrency game right now. It is doing all sorts of weird things, and we're actually kind of exploring it ourselves, and it's very interesting to see what's happening there, because again, money is just it's just a thing. It's a tool. It's something we assign value to it. But let's make that value to inject a little soul into how we identify our value. Nick, over to you.
So I think you and I think alike, because the word I was going to throw at everybody was value. You just said it 3 times in the last 10 seconds. I've been waiting to hear that word. The truth is if we're talking about empathy, we have, and talking about Greta and Elon, you're walking a fine line. You have to create value in being empathetic, but you have to be hard on the gas, or you have to hit the brakes. It depends on what industry you're in. And speaking from my industry, I work in a convention industry where plastics and signboard is heavily used. And And my goal is to hopefully change that. I know Chance once had a radical idea of removing or banning plastic signboard from our building, and that really shook a foundation of people in our industry. And we had to dial that back. But what I would try and say is that, speaking from my personal standpoint in sustainability, my own personal growth, and how I tie that in, I understand that I can't change somebody, I can only influence them. And if that's really the case, then we've got to stop talking about changing industries. We've got to talk about influencing that. What does that look like? Understanding value, who to be empathetic for, how we can be empathetic. And I just wanted to bring that up to remind people, if there's somebody struggling with addiction, I can't change them. I can't tell them to stop. Like, I can't get them to stop drinking. I can only influence them, and I can't influence them by throwing a sign in their face and yelling at them the whole time. That's just going to make them drink more. So there's just this really unique challenge that is individual to each of us in all of our industries. It's just really understanding who to tie the empathy to and how you can influence that.
So before you jump in, Jose, I do want to, we've got about 7 minutes left or so, try to stay on time so everybody can go on about their busy days, evenings, wherever you might be in the world. I want to say thank you to Nick, AKA The Energy, here in the VIRIVERSE, for joining us on stage. Super interesting and well said, the way that you laid that out on the kind of individual level, one-on-one, right? And can we use some of those principles to meet people where they're at and influence them to change in a, radical influencer sort of way, but also sometimes just in a patient, compassionate, empathetic sort of way too. There's a balance there as well. And then of course, Paul, also known as the provocateur. So glad to have you join us always, and your amazing wisdom as the boomer in the room. We're so glad to have you with us. So thank you both. Jose, over to you to kind of respond to everything that just happened there. And then we'll work into a final question and work towards a close with Aurora.
Yeah, it was super fast. I read here Beverly says educating communities to kind of just take advantage of that is also very interesting. One of the things that I've learned is you need to find people like-minded like you, and one good space for that is called My Wonder, and talking specifically about sustainability and consumption is really important to highlight the fact that how marketing is being done right now and how we can improve that in order to make it more sustainable, right? So sustainable marketing, that can be possible. It's fine to bombard people, but as long as you make it consciousness and with a good and positive effect, it will have an impact. So it's not only about how we can change things, it's also how, with the things that we have already, how we can make them work better. So yeah, that was it as a side comment from there.
Very well said. Aurora, any notes on this kind of last bit here before we transition to final questions?
Well, I would love to pose a final question if I can ask the final question.
I have one kind of special queued up. I'll let you.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask this question, and if you like it, then you take it. But here something. So I'm always trying to really focus on making sustainability positive, approachable, practical. I have this whole acronym with my business that I call PEACE, and it's about making sustainability practical, economical, approachable, celebrated, and enjoyable. Because there's so much just doom and gloom and negativity and everything around sustainability. So when I train audiences, particularly around materials waste and looking at plastic, I do a little icebreaker question just to like level set and remind everyone, plastic is not like this evil thing that we must rid the world of. Like you wouldn't even be able to walk into a hospital and get service without
plastic. Miracle product.
It is a miracle product. And so I have this little slide where I have icons of all different kinds of things that are made of plastic. And I do a little icebreaker where I ask everyone in the room, if you were a piece of plastic, what item would you be and why? right? It can be a hanger, it can be a vacuum cleaner, it can be a laptop, like all these things are made of plastic. And I think it's really, and while yes, maybe a lot of those things will one day be replaced by other materials, but a lot of those things, of course, last. They're not single use, and single use is, of course, what we're really trying to deal with mostly. But, you know, I just think it's really important to always kind of come back and say, like, this last part of this conversation around consumption and the need to be like activists and all this is because things get out of balance. And the process of balancing is about removing ourselves from the extremes. One extreme saying, it doesn't matter how much plastic we use, drill, use, you know, like that's one extreme. And one extreme is like, you know, like just, well, extreme, the opposite, right? And so I think it's just really important for us to all remember that, like, we have to be a little more balanced sometimes and just remind ourselves that, like, you know, plastic is a miracle. It saves lives. It's just so wonderful in so many ways, right? And so just to kind of like keep ourselves in like a place of positivity. So that's what I was going to end with is what piece of plastic would you be, Jose?
It would be a PVC tube, actually. I have that already figured out. I've thought of it many times already.
So quick.
Yeah, because I've seen it so many times and it's so versatile. Like, you can use it for water, you can use it for electricity, you can use it for as many years as you want it in your house, and it's gonna be fine. You can cut it and then stick it again with some kind of PVC glue. I think it's extremely good. And as you said, Aurora, that's totally correct. Plastic is not this huge demon that we have to fight. It's the small things that don't need plastic that we need to fight against, right? So packaging, single-use plastic elements, they're brainless. Like, we don't need them, right? So let's try to find another solution for them and implement them so we can be away of the conventional plastic for this kind of small things that we don't really need in our life.
Very well said. Okay, so we're going to transition into one last kind of question through an imagination exercise. I'm actually going to hand you a changemaker ability to answer this question, Jose, and then we'll wind into a close, and we'll end with some really strong river flowing, waterfall, so to speak, I suppose. All right, so everybody put on their imagination caps. We're going to go straight into the VIRIVERSE. Sustainability can often be too heavy, right? Humans are on this kind of wave to extinction. Nonsense, right? Let's have fun with this. Let's meet these challenges. Let's figure this thing out. So, all right, we're going straight into the VIRIVERSE. You are on an island. There's a beach. Ocean's coming up, right? Coming up on the shore. You're not really sure how you got there, but you're on the beach. You see some greenery kind of to your right alongside the beach, and you turn around and there's a cabin. Okay, there's a cabin. And what you notice about this place is it's kind of dark, darker than you would think for an island. Where you found yourself is a place called Giving Wisdom, which is what we call a microsphere here in the VIRIVERSE, which is a place inside humans. So this is a place where you give wisdom. So you walk around the back of the cabin, you don't see anything, everything's dark. As you walk around, there is a giant bear, a big bear, black as the night, with silver ears, silver snout. And he starts talking to you. And he said, I have something for you. I'm going to hand you a changemaker ability so that you can help save the world. And what he hands you is a silver lining shield. Okay? So you grab the shield, you've got it, you're holding it, the shield is protecting you. What it's protecting you, as you grab it, darkness comes in at you. All the hard things in life, all of the tough stuff, the difficult things that you experience in your life. The shield protects you though, and you're able to look into that darkness and you're able to find silver lining, okay? So my question, or the bear's question, the shadow bear as he goes by here in the VIRIVERSE, is COVID. You mentioned it earlier, Jose. COVID's been really hard. What is the silver lining that we can turn into a spark for change and build the sustainable world and that future that Aurora hates so much. Over to you, Jose. What is your silver lining from COVID? And remember, you got your shield. You're safe from all the tough stuff that you found, and you're finding the goodness. Where is the goodness?
The goodness is in realizing that regardless you're physically alone, you will never be without someone that you can count on. Because of this whole pandemic situation, I was caught up here in Germany, and I haven't been able to see my family for 2 years now. Luckily, I'm traveling now. But yeah, the silver lining of it all as a COVID situation is we need to realize how much we are affecting the environment and how we can solve this problems. And this related to not being alone is, and also using my quote, the quote that I use for now is, let's walk together, let's run together. Accomplishing things together is better, and failing together can give you more positive insights and more silver lining in the end than if you fail alone.
Extremely well said. Couldn't agree more. All right, so as we kind of wrap up, a little housekeeping to send everybody out the door. Of course, again, we'll have you go sit by a waterfall and enjoy the sound and the power of nature. Because I don't know about you all, but I'm feeling pretty powerful as an individual after listening to the amazing things that Jose is doing and everything that everybody has shared. So on the back here in this board, my kind of favorite sustainability beacon that we found during this travel through the VIRIVERSE in this live event is that a sustainable individual is all the world needs, right? And of course, we've had mushrooms. So there's a mushroom hanging out there representing the one and only Jose, making the world a little bit better place, right? So for anybody that is new to Viridescent and this experience that we are creating, we are a mentorship and storytelling platform for sustainability champions. We will actually be releasing a immersive comic today from the planet of Friction, which is an immersive planet that is an analogy between the fire and ice relationship that sustainability champions and humans have with glaciers and fossil fuels and such. So if you're interested in that or joining, kind of getting into our mentorship program, we will be launching our immersive workshops, which will bring a whole new experience for change makers of the world and helping people become the sustainable individuals that, frankly, the world needs, right? Really, really important. So if you want to get access to that, you can sign up for our email experience and then you'll be in the know. That'll also get you access to some good pricing and things on some of those things as they come. It is linktree/Viridescent. And there's a dot between the TR and the EE. And we are so, so thankful for Jose, AKA the Symbiotic here in the VIRIVERSE. And of course, as always, joined by the lovely Dr. Aurora Dawn Benton, AKA the Changemaker. And we will see you next time, friends. Enjoy. If you're celebrating Thanksgiving next week, enjoy. If you are not, enjoy that too. And we will see you very, very soon. Signed, your Vera Vigilantes. Thank you so much.
This concludes our conversation with Jose Miguel Gutierrez, also known as Guti, and of course, the Symbiotic in the VIRIVERSE. An immense thank you to this changemaker for his work to make the world a better place. Our music today was brought to you by Cranky Conductor. Look him up on Spotify and Instagram. And thanks as always to our planet for the sights and sounds of nature. Today we featured Flathead Lake, Montana, USA, and the Beartooth Mountains running between Montana and Wyoming, USA. For those listening to the podcast, check out our YouTube channel to see these naturescapes in their visual form. As always, thank you so much for listening to the VIRIVERSE live event and podcast experience. If you're an aspiring sustainability champion who wants to break through the status quo, join our email experience at linktree/Viridescent. We also have some very exciting workshops launching March 2nd, 2022. You'll be able to access that through the email experience too. And lastly, do you have another friend, aspiring human out there that could benefit from this? Share it, subscribe, like, review, comment,
all the things. We love to hear from you and your perspective. It teaches us shit. Later, friends. Your Vera Vigilantes.